Hello, this is Ryan from My Try Running Programs, and today we are into the fifth week of the Hanson's Advanced Marathon Training Program, almost a third of the way through the program, which is pretty crazy to think about. And this particular week is a little bit more meaty, a little bit more to discuss comparative to week four, and that's primarily because there's three primary workouts for this week. Firstly, on Tuesday, there's another interval session with 5 by 1 kilometer splits, doing 400 meters of jogging in between. Then on Thursday, a 6 mile tempo run, and then on Sunday, a 12-mile long run with 3 easy runs placed on Monday for my particular training, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, doing 2 6-mile easy runs and 1 7-mile easy run with my rest day falling on Saturday, which will probably continue to be the way that I will space the program moving forward. It seems to be working well for me now that I've kind of got my supplementation and diet dialed in a little bit better. I'm actually able to complete the speed sessions without falling apart completely. So the week called for 47 miles. I ended up more near 50. And this is primarily just on running a little bit of extra cool down on the speed session so I could, not spend too much of my time running during my work from home days. That way I could just, kind of stay within my allotted lunch break time. So with that being said, Tuesday was the first major session of the week. And this ended up being a really great interval session for me. So once again, this is a 5 by 1 kilometer effort. And so it starts off with a 1.5 miles or so of warm up. And then from there, I just hit the kilometers hard. And you can see the splits are pretty clear here. The first split, was able to get it into the low sixes, high fives, as I like to do for these particular sessions. Second one spiked a little bit faster because this is a downhill portion of it. So my kind of high end range on that one hit 5:36, 37-ish pace. But once again, kind of right within that high 5 to low to mid 6 range. The third particular rep for this, and because I use this particular route quite frequently to do my intervals, and there's a reasoning behind this. When I come out from my home, this is nice and flat. And then coming down to Natividad, it's a slight downhill. So it allows you to get 1 or 2 reps in, maybe a little bit faster, get your legs under you, build up some confidence so that the rest of the workout goes well. Okay. The third particular rep is on a slight uphill. And so it ran a little bit slower. You'll see sometimes I popped up into the high 6s even. But then picked it back up near the end, getting back down into the low 5s, or excuse me, high 5s. So once again, this was a pretty good rep, but you can start to see that I'm starting to struggle a bit. You see these big dips down in the middle of the rep. And so the fourth rep also kind of dipped down, had some struggles in it. Admittedly, this was me turning around in a cul-de-sac. But one of the issues that I'm finding with my speed work sessions, it's not that I'm unable to hit higher threshold type paces, it's the maintenance of it. And I think I've talked about this a few different times in my past videos. I'd like to see cleaner reps, even if it was running them at 6 minutes flat, maybe not quite as fast as I could outright run them. But I'm sure there's some give and take there. I do like seeing that I'm able to push the top end into the high to mid 5s at some circumstances. And I think that does have some beneficial training stimulus. So there's a little bit of give and take there. But I would like to see some flatter intervals if at all possible. Now, what would have been my fifth interval, I had a bit of an issue here with, I can't really remember what happened specifically, but I either just wasn't feeling it or had some type of issue. So I decided to hold off, take a little bit of the cool down mileage, and then run another interval later, the fifth and final interval later. And you can see I did that fifth interval later in the run, not particularly fast, everywhere from the low to mid 6s, even spiking up closer to 7 minutes at one point there. So not a particularly great final rep, but at least I got the fifth rep in. So overall, a much better interval training session comparative to the previous 2 weeks. And really, this was kind of a mindset shift within week 5. I wanted to just say, okay, worst case scenario, you start the rep at a 5K pace and it drops down to 10K pace, or even maybe half marathon goal pace during the rep. If that happens, you'll survive. It's better to at least be able to get some sessions and build some confidence under my feet. Because I would really say leading up to this week, weeks 1, 2, and 3 went okay, kind of. Week 3 was kind of a mess. but certainly week 4 was a big letdown. And so I wanted to start to get some confidence going, be able to actually put on the shoes for speed sessions and feel like I could actually do something on those days. And so this was a good move in the right direction. It built a little bit of confidence that I took into the tempo run on Thursday. And this is meant to be a little bit more of a sustained pace run. I think in my ideal world, I would be running these tempo type efforts probably in about the 6:30-ish range, maybe a little bit faster, maybe 6:20. Now, you have to do, you don't have to do, but I do the mile warm up as recommended in the plan, and then jump into the 6 miles of tempo, and then do a little bit of cool down after that. So in this particular case, I didn't really start, getting the full pace going until after the traffic light here. So that lowered the first mile a little bit down because I have to wait at a traffic light between Barand and Natividad there. And then you can see the following mile after that was able to get down to 6:32. Then it popped up a little bit to 6:52 when I was running slightly uphillish. And then I'll be honest, I was a little tired in miles 5 and 6, so those dropped down a bit to about the 6:53, 6:58 range. And you can see there's a lot of ebb and flow in these. Once again, not terribly consistent, but a lot of this is just accounting for changes in elevation, turning down certain streets. Nothing incredibly crazy there. What I was very happy to see was a great closing mile, picking the pace back up to about 6:30 pace, and really being able to run that final mile hard when I was admittedly already pretty tired, and then was able to cool down after that. So overall, I would have considered this a pretty darn good run. All things considered, this was the best tempo session I've had of the year, really being able to run the 6 miles hard. Were they at a perfect pacing? No, it probably averaged out to about a 6:45 pace, but much, much better. Like I said, right now, I just like to get my tempo runs to about an average of 6:30 pace, and then slowly bump that down to like 6:25, 6:20, so on and so forth, just as I get the confidence to put that type of mileage under feet at that type of pace. But once again, I'm just glad to see that I was able to take a tempo session, run the whole thing through, not give up on the session, even when I, was facing struggles, or, the run got hard, things of that nature. I was able to just handle it and keep moving. So that was a big move in the right direction. From a confidence perspective, it's like put me totally on track to keep doing hard sessions moving forward. Now, my third and final run is kind of it's a bummer what happened to me here. My watch decided to freeze on me almost immediately into the run. And I should have just stopped and figured out how to reset the watch. It's actually quite easy. I didn't know how to reset it, so I had to stop and then kind of pull up my Strava app on my phone. So it's kind of a little incomplete, and it hurts the data on my Runalyze. I don't get to really know how this helped me or hurt me. But overall, this was a 12-mile long run. I did this kind of up in my wife's hometown of Castro Valley, up around Lake Chabot. Really beautiful place to run if you're up in the Northern California area. I highly recommend it. But there's a lot of elevation gain here. So you're going to see some fluctuation in times, and that's to be expected with this type of run. Now, just as a reminder for those who might be new to my videos, my long run pace should be between 6:52 to 8:32. And so in this particular case, I ran it in the higher 7s because there was a couple of miles that slowed me down. But I do try my best to keep as much of the mileage in about the 7:30 or faster range. So I'm getting a good stimulus under feet. Now, once again, running this at Lake Chabot, this is not a flat course. There's a lot of movement along these trails. There's a lot of people on these trails. So it's not like maybe the perfect running conditions, but it's such a beautiful and fun course that it's hard not to have a good time. I absolutely had a blast on this run. The first 4 miles were pretty easy. The first mile or so was just getting out to Lake Chabot. The second and third mile, you're running along a flattish portion of the trail. There's a few spikes up, a few spikes down, but nothing inherently crazy. Very manageable, and it's paved. That's an important factor moving later into the run. Then in the fourth mile, this is when you start to pick up in about the back half of this mile. You're running along the lake, and then you cross a bridge. And this is where the dirt trails kind of become a factor a bit, and certainly more so into mile 5 of the run and onwards. So this is a change. You're getting a very mixed use type of run here. You go from running on concrete asphalt leading out to the lake, then you're on an asphalt hiking and biking pathway, and then you transition into dirt, and not always perfectly flat dirt. There's down trees, there's standing water. It's not a, perfectly clean running trail. So miles 5, 6, and 7, you can see there's a fair amount of vertical gain during these 3 miles. You gain roughly close to 300 total feet, and then you'll lose it almost immediately on mile 8. These 3 miles, while absolutely beautiful, you're crisscrossing up and down kind of a little hilly section up near and kind of behind the lake where there's kind of a little forest there. The issue is just as I alluded to before, there's a lot of down trees currently on that trail, roughly about 6 that I remember. Some you have to jump over or climb over, some you have to go under because of my height. That makes it a little challenging, but by and large, while it just adds kind of something new, it's different. But any of the major spikes downhill, I've found, and this is very true for mile 8, that because of rains, there'd be washed out portions. And so the footing was very unstable. And so if you bomb those sections, I feel like, yeah, it could be really fast and it would bump up the pacing on your overall run. But I feel like you're really risking a foot or ankle injury if you're not careful. And so for me, I would sometimes kind of double back down those hills, or just kind of even in some cases walk in portions, because I was just not feeling safe going down those hills. And so that's actually most of the time when you see these little spikes, you can see one of them was on a pure downhill. On this one, this spike is downwards, I'm just trying to not basically fall down in this kind of weird, uneven section. And then these couple of ones, I'm just trying to avoid trees here. And so overall, I was able to really maintain a good quality pacing throughout this run. And that's really how I finished it out. Miles 8, 9, well, really 9, 10, 11, and 12, they flatten out a bit more. There's just a very small hill on mile 11 to go up. But this also is back where the trails are a little bit flatter. They're a little bit cleaner. And I mean that in terms of kind of, not being washed out. There's not a lot of holes to avoid and things of that nature. And then you get back into paved sections in miles 10, 11, and 12. So overall, a really great run for me. You can see that the overall vertical gain in this run was quite a bit. It was almost 1,000 feet of elevation gain. And if my watch would have been recording the whole time, it would have gone over 1,000. I would have guessed this is probably about 1,050 to 1,100 feet based on the portion of the run that wasn't recorded. So once again, a really good long run for me. The pace here it's not a sexy pace by any stretch of the imagination, but that's a really good pace given that particular trail. And the reason I was so interested in running this is I'm eyeing either running a half marathon or a full marathon here at Lake Chabot as a trail run race later in the year. And so if you look at the types of paces in those races, a lot of very competitive times in those races are actually somewhere around the 8:30-ish pace, or about the 7:30 to 8:30-ish pace. So I really feel like from a confidence perspective, if I continue to train hard, I feel like I could be very competitive at that type of race. So overall, 3 really great workouts for the week. If we go to Runalyze and we move into that particular week, the only downfall is we don't get to see what type of training stimulus that run had on Sunday. But if we go back, once again, we check kind of the effective VO2 max. And of course, I accidentally brought up the glossary instead of the chart. This week particularly ran from January 31st to February 6th. So if we look at January 31st, the Runalyze app assumes that I have a VO2 max roughly around the 53.3 mark based on my current training. And by the end of the week, it viewed it as about a point higher. So once again, a pretty good takeaway from this particular week. Certainly happy to see that. And something else that I found really interesting in this app is the marathon shape calculator. So this gives you some guesses on kind of target times you could hit in a race based on your current training and where they would feel you could be if you bumped your training up to a certain target. So based on my current VO2 max, they believe that I could run a 2:56 marathon with optimal training, okay, or about a 6:44 per mile pace. a 10K around the 38-minute mark, which I think is reasonable, be really hard, but I think is doable, and a half marathon around 124. Now, for those of you who've been watching all of these update videos, I've gone into this training cycle this year with the goal of running a 120 somewhere in August. I've decided to skip my April race, not because I don't think that I could do well at it, but I just don't see a need to race that race right now. Instead, I'll do a time trial at the end of this training cycle. So for me, ideally, I'd like to see myself get a little bit faster. And so as my effective VO2 max improves and we keep adding more and more mileage in this program, it'll be really interesting to see where this marathon shape goes in terms of Runalyze's opinion based on the types of training inputs that I'm putting into their application. So overall, I think things are going pretty well. This week has started off, my 6th week has started off very well so far. So I'm really excited to see. I feel like the training stimulus is starting to kick in a little bit. These runs are getting a little bit easier. The only thing that's really kind of bad right now is I'm still a little sore from my run on Sunday. My hamstrings kind of took a beating climbing all those hills. But by and large, training is going well. So I hope your training is also going well. And I look forward to seeing you in the next update video.